You're listening to the Business and Life Podcast, where 7 days a week, proven entrepreneurs share their success stories, failures, and give you true value on how you can build a great business and an awesome life. With your host, Mike Olivas.
Without further ado, James Short, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on again, man. So tell our listeners a little bit about, something interesting about yourself.
Interesting about myself.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I guess that kind of defines interesting. Maybe this will be interesting, maybe it's not. But I guess one place to start would be, great question, man. What is interesting about myself? I think that what I really like, I think what people will, if you ask some of my friends about that, I've definitely taken a kind of a non-traditional path. When I turned, basically I turned 40 years old, I started a plan to, I completely changed careers. So most people my age, including a lot of my friends, have wives and families and home ownership and all that great stuff. And I decided to save up all my money and go full blown into the film industry. And so taking a little bit of a non-traditional path, I wanted to change careers and really do something, go for something that I love doing, which is telling stories. And even though it's been nerve-wracking and anxiety-ridden, it's also been really gratifying and rewarding so far. And, I'm kind of living in this kind of big world of uncertainty when you start a new career and a new business and all that, as you can probably relate.
Yeah.
But, for me, I feel like I kind of mastered everything in my past career, digital media. I mean, there's always more you can do, but I just didn't feel like I could take it any further. And ever since I was a little kid, I've always loved movies. I loved, I was an English major in college. I'm still a voracious reader. I just love telling stories. I love kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together when it comes to uncovering a story, whether that's watching a film or a TV show or reading a book or what have you. So
no, that's awesome. I think, James, the props to you. I think a lot of times, like you just mentioned, you kind of capped out, right? At some point, you're like, okay, well, is complacency where I want to be for the rest of my life? And that happens a lot. I've been blessed to be able to coach a lot of cool entrepreneurs moving up or maybe getting out of the 8 to 5 grind, and want to do something different. But the 40-year-old contrarian, James Short, that's what it's about, right? Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah,
and I think so many people look at the age aspect and say, "Oh, I'm too old to make this move." And you're so young, and I always tell people you're so young, really. So even at 40, 50 years old, well, even if you were to screw it all up, you still have time to figure it all out, right? And not that you are, because you've been successful with what you're doing, but people are afraid of that ladder, right? Like what ifs, and it's sometimes like, what if you don't? And if you don't, and you see the complacency of the 8 to 5 or just the simple grind that you're doing, which is totally fine for some people, in reality, that's the biggest hurdle for. So I think that's awesome that you've been able to say, hey, listen, they're owning homes. People are, at this point, you're going out and pitching while some people are going out and pitching your shows, and people are going out and buying pacifiers. I get it.
Sure.
So, we totally, and I'm in the same boat. I'm kind of a contrarian myself, and I think at the end of the day, sometimes you look at the top. Let's say there's a top 5% for a reason. It's because they're doing what the other 95% aren't.
Right.
And that's the easiest way, I think, to break down the contrarian effect of just going against the grain and swimming against the current. So very cool, man. I love to hear that breakdown as far as your intro. Yeah, good. Congratulations on the start and the dive. And I love to hear some more about your successes. So tell me a little bit about what your company does and what kind of value it brings to the marketplace. What's the name of the company specifically, so our listeners know?
Sure. It's Inwood Road Films. We officially started the business, I guess, beginning of 2016. It's myself and my brother, John Short.
Okay.
And my brother, he's been in the business for probably about 10 years now, at least on the international sales side, is primarily what his career has been. So we wanted to take his ability to value films, evaluate films, and understand, especially the international market, where a big majority of, or the international market is where a lot of you get your revenue from independent film, right?
Okay.
So we wanted to take that plus some of my resources and access to investment capital that I had, and starting to be active investors in films. So basically, what we're doing is we're buying our way in.
Sure.
We are using our own capital to invest in independent films, but we really don't want to just stroke a check and hope that it works out. We want to learn from that process. So we want to really collaborate with the filmmakers where we can, and just learn as much as we can in a pathway to actually being full-time producers ourselves.
Awesome.
So,
Would you say your niche, James, is that, if you had to break down the niche, because if you look at it a whole, we always say, riches are in the niches, and you guys are trying to carve out one for yourself, right? And so, is your niche international market? Is that international films?
you know what? That's a great question. Actually, that was an intention. At least at the beginning, our intention was to focus on films with an international appeal.
Okay.
These are typically bigger budget films. At least when I say bigger budget compared to what we're doing now. Maybe $2 to $3 to $5 million films with a big name attached. In general, that's what attracts international audiences. But as soon as we started the company, the international market was just getting more and more difficult with the rise of all the streaming services and companies like Netflix out there buying worldwide rights. I remember my brother coming back from Cannes in 2016. He's like, man, it is rough out there.
Yeah.
So so basically what we've done is even though there are opportunities in the international market, and that's part of our strategy is to monetize internationally where we can. It's really the films that we've pivoted towards are a little smaller budget and really focus on domestic audiences.
Okay.
So for example, the first film that we actually invested in was a romantic comedy with about a million one budget. Not a name cast, fantastic cast, but just a smaller cast.
Okay.
And if we get it, our approach was, hey, if we get some international revenue off of this, great. But we think that this can do really well domestically. We think this can be profitable. Let's go for it. And that's so. As far as like carving out a niche for ourselves, we've really pivoted towards a little bit smaller films. More the films we've done so far have been more kind of in the $1 million range, a little more, maybe a little less. And if we get any international revenue off of it, it's really more icing on the cake. Then we're relying on that to recoup on the film for our investors.
What is a category of a lower budget film in terms of revenues go? Like, let's say investors invest X. What is X in terms of a small film?
Yeah, great. I mean, you can define micro budget, which is typically like right around the 750,000 level, right? But sorry. Can you say the question again? I'm not sure.
Sure.
I
like
got
if
that.
I think that you answered it. So like if a low budget film would be $750,000 around there.
Yeah. So if you define it by let's say the unions, right?
Sure.
Like a micro budget film is I think 600,000 minimum is the number. And then, but people are doing films less than that. We did a film, we've done films less than that. We've done films more than that. So right now the industry really is in this transition mode where, several years ago, it would be unheard of to do a film for $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Or at least for a bit bigger distributor out there, like the Lionsgates of the world, right?
Right.
But today, with it becoming, just more challenge, it could be in lots of respects more challenging to recoup on your investment. Obviously, you want to make a profit, so you can keep doing it. There are a lot of films that we see where, hey, yeah, maybe it can be done for $2 or $3 million, but hey, let's see if we could do it for half that and without sacrificing any quality of the film, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It seems like, and I don't know the film industry nearly as well as you do. I have a couple of friends in it and a friend of mine out here. I'm in in sunny Puerto Rico out here, but St. Croix, I have an advisor that's been mine for years, and he was involved in the film. Really, he just kind of donated his yacht, but they're being creative where he donated the yacht for the film. It went on Netflix and all that kind of jazz. But really what happened was, people start giving out some royalties and some percentages if people have those things to give, where that budget now is going to be open for maybe a better, let's say for a better actor, if you will, or an actress, and so a better cast. And so where does most of the budget go, in your professional opinion, James, when it comes to a film? Because I like to sometimes dig into the business part of it, but where does most of the budget go when it comes to films and making a film?
Yeah, great question. I mean, in general, you have kind of two main categories of the budget. You have the above the line and the below the line, right? And what that means, above the line is like the main big components of the film. So what you're paying the director, the main cast, the main characters, who that cast represents, the producers, and that's really like your above the line budget. And then you have below the line, which is the crew and everybody else that kind of pulls that together. Okay. And that can really, so to answer your question, I mean, it can really depend on all the films. I mean, what we look for, when we're looking for a film, is we really want to see alignment between the primary filmmakers, how they're incentivized, and if that's aligned with the success of the film, right?
Got it.
So if we see a film that there's, say it's a $1.5 million budget, but there's $400,000 in fees going towards the producers, that's 25% or so of that budget going just to pay the producers, right? Where they could have taken less money, taken more of a back end, more upside, right? And invest that money back into the film, whether that's getting better cast or getting another location we want, more special effects, a better editor. Everybody's got kind of different, everybody maybe value people in or different roles in a film. Like for example, like I really value having a strong editor. Like I don't think that should be any, having an editor that's got a real vision and kind of a style to bring that to a film, separate from the director and everybody that's been immersed in that film for months, if not years, and to come in and see it from their perspective, I think that's really valuable.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your journey with, Inwood Road Films. I always like to try to ask, or I like to ask entrepreneurs like yourself that took the dive, right? And we talked a little bit about this prior to recording, a little bit about being a contrarian and doing things differently, which a lot of our listeners are doing, and some of our listeners are hopeful to do so. And I think sometimes it's all about just motivating them to do it. But tell me a little bit about, we always say, failures, we've got to fail your way to success, right? Give me a time where you felt you hit rock bottom, James, or you were close to it and were able to overcome that kind of disaster or objection.
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, it has not all been, 100% victories. So when I had, just starting out, I just had, just a lot of self-doubt, and we had, from the very beginning, we had some really big false starts, right? So there was a TV movie actually that my brother and I were starting off with, and we got almost to the finish line to producing that, and it completely fell apart. And we spent a lot of time and effort trying to get that going. Then we optioned this other script, and it was about a rideshare Uber kind of thriller. And as soon as we started getting, we really liked it for the international appeal and a lot of the components to it. And, then we got wind that everybody was doing a rideshare thriller, right? Really? Yeah, exactly. And so, and we, so we just had, we had these false starts. And frankly, during that time, I still had my full-time job. I had started the business, but I still had my full-time job.
Yeah, of course.
And I didn't have, it was hard to get momentum, right? And it wasn't until I finally quit and went all in to focus on it full-time hey, shocker, then stuff really started happening, right? I was able to spend more time, nurturing my network, finding projects, meeting with other filmmakers, and really doing that. So, but those first, like getting it off the ground and trying, not really diving in, not taking that leap of faith, actually delayed our success. And I'm not saying I regret that. That was part of our path. But I look back now and say, hey, look, if we just made that conscious decision just to say, okay, we're in, not like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, maybe we could have made things happen a lot faster.
Absolutely. And I think there's either, if you get things faster or cheaper, there's a quality aspect that starts to get, suffer as well. And, I always try to remind the listeners, entrepreneurs, clients that I coach are, it's really hard to do this. And believe me, I struggle with it myself, which is try to enjoy the journey rather than the outcome. When you do that, right, it's, you start to, psychologically realize like, okay, baby steps are successes and baby steps are progress. And you get that feeling of progress. What's the next step? I got the pitch down. What's the next step? And trying to have those celebrations early, but it definitely is hard until you start seeing money in the bank, because that's what we're so used to, right? We're used to someone writing a check and feeling, cool, I got it done. I closed a deal. I got a script that was, given the thumbs up to go move into development. And so in terms of your industry and understanding that entrepreneurs are about to jump in, let's say an entrepreneur wants to jump into the film world, do you think that technology has played a really big role in bringing that cost down? I mean, these days you can go get a couple $100 4K camera, right? And are people shooting some of these short films and pitching them? And is that something that has helped you personally? So the cost is a little bit lower so you can do more?
Yeah, great question. I mean, technology has, you can't understate how it's changed the game the last several years, right? So you have all these different formats on how people are consuming content. And really what I believe is that the message should match the medium, right? So the size of your screen or the context of when you're watching a piece of content, that's going to influence the type of content that you're watching. So for example, and this is where a lot of money is moving today, right? So you have everybody watching content on their smartphones, right? But nobody really wants to lean back and watch, a 100-minute movie on a smartphone, right? Yeah, right. But they still consume content, right? Like people all over YouTube and Snapchat. That's why Quibi raised $150 million, and all they are creating is, or going to be launching is, 3 to 5 minute short content, right? Yep. So without smartphones, Quibi wouldn't exist, right? There wouldn't 100%. Even be, right? So, but yes, and to your point, with the technology out there, people are, directors, filmmakers are coming in and making quality films for a fraction of the price. I mean, I remember hearing an interview, I think it was Mark Duplass, amazing independent filmmaker. He was on Mark Maron's show several years ago, talking about meetings he was taking with Hollywood studios, and he was scaring him to death because he was like, I can make this film that we're talking about here for a fraction of what you guys have been doing it all along. And it was scaring the studios who were like, those big budgets equal big paydays for everybody. But it also means, it's that's a harder business model. So it's not a race to the bottom. And just because you can make something cheaper does not mean that you should. In fact, there's a lot of cases I think I've seen, and including in films that we've been a part of, where yes, we did make it for a really small amount, but I think actually if we invested more money into it, it could have been even better. But yes, the technology at our disposal now is really opening the doors for it. It's lowering the barrier to entry, right, from a financial standpoint. You can film a movie on an iPhone, right? Steven Soderbergh did it. Sean, I forget what's his name, the one that did Tangerine, one of my favorite independent films from a few years ago, shot all that on an iPhone.
Wow, that's so awesome. It's so crazy. I mean, your resolution on iPhones these days, or any kind of phone, the Pixels and the Samsungs of the world are insane. and you're able to do that and create a legitimate film on something that's handheld on your palm is insane. But you said something I want to go back to really quick, James, that I just want to mention to our listeners that when I asked you, it was, what was, a hard part. You mentioned, you had a full-time job, and that's great. I think that's a really good idea for a lot of entrepreneurs who are afraid to take the dive and or go get a loan and or ask mom and dad and friends of friends for money, right? Mm-hmm. When you don't do that, yes, you can work full-time on your job while you work part-time on your dreams. And eventually that model will shift upside down, where now you're working full-time on your dreams, and you got this part-time gig going on that you're making an extra grand, an extra $2,000, an extra $5,000, and then that picks up an extra $10,000 a month. And then you're like, hey, peace, boss, I'm out. Like that's very possible. And that happens for a lot of people. It's probably something that you did, but what I like what you said, which a lot of entrepreneurs I think are aspiring don't understand, is that you got to put your back against the wall. When you don't put your back against the wall, it's, why would I do it? I'm comfortable, right? You're comfortable with the job and you have the income coming in on a monthly basis, but then it's like, okay, it's time. And once you say it's time, even though you're probably not 100% ready, that's the best thing you probably could have done to take the dive, because your back's against the wall. And I always kind of use maybe an analogy, but sometimes it's a really scary one, but I think it's only scary and freaky to hit home. Like I said, what if mom gets sick and you got to make 20 grand? And if you don't make that 20 grand, she can't have that surgery that she really needs. You're going to find a way to make that 20 grand, right? You will. And so it's the same idea. And now, the challenge for you, James, is keeping your back against the wall, right? Because then you start getting comfortable again, being your own boss. But, having that motivation initially and seeing that momentum, like you mentioned, it was hard to get momentum. Once you get momentum and progress, that equals success to some people outside the check, right? It equals success because you see it moving. So again, props to you for just taking the dive at the first place, and then also taking the dive within, leaving the job, because that's really scary sometimes, but people are doing it day in and day out. And our listeners need to understand, like, that's what it takes. I don't know how to make the money. You will figure it out as long as you have the drive to do it. Yeah.
I absolutely, you do want to take that dive. But in order to really dedicate and respect the dream that you're going for, right? What you're really passionate about. Sure. It's okay to have a plan. And like I said, even though, I may have delayed getting momentum going earlier with not, immediately quitting my job, at the same time enabled me to organize myself, put a plan together, take care of a lot of the administrative work, definitely do that. But at some point you've got to jump, right? Yeah. So
it doesn't mean not taking calculated risk. You got to take the calculated risk. You got to break it down. You got to become a freak in the spreadsheets, is what I like to call it, right? You got to get within it. You got to understand what it looks like, what a cash flow projection looks like, what if kind of situations, and then start working towards it. But, why do you think, in your opinion, why do you think entrepreneurs out there give up on their business and dreams? Maybe there's an entrepreneur out there like, hey man, I'm over it. I can't do this. I'm tired of, eating, noodles every day. Like, what is something that you feel, why it is that people actually do end up giving up?
Oh man, that's a really great question. I think a lot of, this is just, I guess, just from my experience, what I've seen is, I don't see people giving up. The people that give up that I see, are the ones that get distracted with something else, right? Maybe they're in it for the wrong reasons, right? So let's just take Hollywood, for example. There's a lot of vanity and greed out here.
Yep.
And a lot of people are getting into this business because those kinds of ego-driven elements drive them, right?
Yep.
And if you get into it for that, and you come up against hardship, then you're not going to really have anything to fall back on, right? You're just going to get distracted with, okay, well, I need to go back and do something that makes money, right?
Right.
So what I would say to the entrepreneurs that are getting into it for the right reasons, because they've got, something in their heart that tells them that if I don't do this, then I'm really gonna I'm going to suffer,
Yeah.
right? And my relationships are going to suffer, and I at least got to try this, right? So as long as you can, like, at the end of the day, if you're an entrepreneur out there, and listen, you've given everything you have, and you're out of money, you can't take any more. Like, okay, like, it's okay to fail. Like, failure should not be something that you should be afraid of. And trusting, and so if you've got to pick up and start over, like, okay, like, you just got to learn from it. And there's probably a reason that happened, but I do believe that, if you're dedicated to that, then doors will open for you along the way. If that really is your path, right? So just get really, philosophical about it. But
no, I love that. That's great. Listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the, it's all part of the process. It's going to be part of your path, and it may suck right then, but if you can, learning from that, I know it's cliche, but it will make you stronger, and you'll be able to learn from it and just keep going.
Yeah. Life Nation, we're all striving towards different goals. Maybe your goal is to finally quit the 8 to 5 grind, quit your job, or take the next step with your existing business. Whatever the goal may be, regardless of your reasons, if you are serious about taking the next step and finally trying to build the life that you deserve, the life that you want to live, take the leap of faith. Go to michaellevis.com and let's discuss your goals and life. It's 100% free. There's no obligation. It's MIKEOLIVAS.com. Schedule a quick call. I'd love to help. Absolutely. No, that's you hit it on the point, James. Good. I think, again, if it doesn't challenge you, it's not changing you in terms of your entrepreneurship or just in life in general. And you'll build up that mental psychology. And I think you said something that kind of resonates with most entrepreneurs, where if you're doing something for money, you might make some money. You might make a lot of money, But eventually you might hit a mental or psychological roadblock where, all right, I'm done, right? We don't know. There's probably a lot of jobs out there that people don't like to do, but someone started a company around it, right? But they probably likely enjoyed it. They probably, maybe it wasn't, renting out jet skis in the Caribbean, right? But maybe it was something where, at the end of the day, they like the process of it. They like the process of the business. And so find within your business, if you're getting a little bit tired out there, listeners, I mean, you got to find something that you really enjoy to do and stick to it. And you mentioned, why do people fail? James, you're saying, well, they get distracted. Distractions are all around us today. And your ability to focus, we always say focus stands for follow one course until success. If you can focus, follow one course until success, you will be 10 times more successful than most people out there, because some people don't have the strength, right, to just turn their phone on, do not disturb while they're working.
Right.
That little simple thing right there will be a game changer, right? And I try to challenge people to that. Why are your notifications on? Why are you getting Facebook and Instagram notifications while you're working? Why do you need to know if this girl swiped you right on Tinder? Like, who cares, right? And so when it's all said, but it happens, right? And so they're just so distracted, because that's what advertising is. Hey, I do a lot of online advertising and marketing as well for my companies. And my goal is to be that distraction at some point. I get it. But there's an angle of understanding that, or you have to understand that if you can't focus on something, it's really easy to be distracted. So mastering focus is huge. So it's a great point.
Yeah. And just to build on that real quick, you're going to give yourself the best chances of success if you're taking care of yourself, right? Yes. Taking care of your body, taking care of yourself mentally. That's exercise, eating well, meditation, which has definitely been wonderful for me. Make time for those things. Investing in your body like that, and your mind is going to enable you to day in, day out, keep pressing ahead.
Absolutely. That's a great point. If you're not healthy within, there's no way you're going to be successful and healthy out. Like it's totally true. It's hard to get out of your own head, especially as a business owner, entrepreneur, someone. You gotta make time for the gym. If you say there's no time, then you're just not making it. Okay. You got to be realistic with yourself. There's so many people that have 8 to 5s that say they don't have time. Like, what are you doing with the other 10 plus hours of the day? Well, wake up at 5 a.m. Oh, that's impossible. Again, limiting beliefs. So find a way to challenge yourself and change that around it. Because if you adapt to that health factor, like James, you just said, you will be 100 times more successful if you're feeling good every day and you're going up to your desk with some energy versus, being groggy and having to depend on 3 cups of coffee in a row, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I have a real life example recently. This year, with all the things I've had going on, a few weeks ago I had an appendectomy. And at 43, which normally you get that when you're like, 14 years old.
Yeah.
It's usually between ages 10 and 30, right? And I woke up in the middle of the night with this awful pain, and 24 hours later, I had a doctor taking my appendix out. And look, hey, that kind of thing happens, and I'm sure perfectly healthy people get appendicitis. However, the way I choose to interpret it is I was stretching myself too thin with too many projects going on. I was traveling a lot. I was partying too much some nights. This is
Sure.
our film industry is a social industry.
You're in entertainment. That's right. Yeah.
Entertainment. And I, in general, like I said, I meditate, I eat well, but when I travel, that stuff suffers.
Oh yeah.
And if I'm prioritizing too much social life over work, which I was in kind of this mode where I was doing it, and my body, again, like I interpreted, was telling me like, okay, look, you got to slow down. You got to take care of yourself, and you got to remember that even though you may think 40 is the new 30, it's not.
or your body doesn't think so, right?
Yeah,
like at some point, your body's like, body doesn't care what year it is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it does not. So that was a real wake up call for me.
Yeah.
I'm sharing this with everyone here because, and just to reiterate, take a hard look at your lifestyle. If you're going to jump into starting your own business, going off on your own, make sure that you are make sure that all the stuff that you can control about how you're taking care of yourself, you are taking care of yourself. You are in a good space for that. Because Absolutely. If you're not, you're gonna mortgage your success or dilute it, or you may not even be able to find it. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I have a schedule on my refrigerator, James, and it's the spin schedule, because I just got really big into spin here in Puerto Rico. They have like 7-8 classes a day, and they're all packed. And so I go probably sometimes 6 days a week, definitely always 4. But what it says on there, and I just circled it, it says fitness equals success. And it's not like fitness equals washboard abs, or fitness equals chicks, or fitness equals money, right? Like that's not what it's about. It was like fitness equals success. And because what I started noticing more and more, even though I've always worked out and tried to take care of myself, and at the end of the day, I just felt better. So being conscious of the way that you feel on the day-to-day, and being conscious even more importantly on how that changes, is pretty damn awesome. And it's really powerful, because when you feel good, you want to keep doing the things that make you feel good. And so when you eat McDonald's, you're going to feel it, right? You're going to feel it, right? And hey, don't get me wrong, I love McDonald's fries here and there, and I'll splurge, and I'm not Mr. like Olympian by any means, but at the end of the day, I also know how it made me feel. It reminds me like, nope, I don't want that too often, right? So let's jump back into a little bit about your business.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about what, James, you're excited about in your business right now.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks for asking, because there's so much. All right, so I guess so project right now that we are the most recent project that we're close to actually locking and finishing is a horror film called The Dark and the Wicked by Brian Bertino. He wrote and directed a film called The Strangers about 10 years ago with Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman, that crazy successful. And it was part of he kind of reinvented the home invasion genre with that film.
Was that the one that were out in the cabins?
They're out in the couple,
family
they go
couple.
Just the couple. Yeah, they go to this. They went to this house. Yeah, and these bad
strangers. They just started harassing the heck out of him. Yeah, I remember that.
Exactly. So, Brian, he's just a real. And I think we chose that project because one, there was just really strong alignment between the filmmakers and the success of the film. There's a lot of just added value in the film in terms of, we shot it on his parents' farm, so he didn't have to pay all his location expenses. And it took place in Texas as well, which is my home state. We filmed it like 30 miles, like outside of where I grew up. Brian's from there as well. I was able to take my investor and his wife to set to kind of really get the see the magic being made for real. So it had a lot of these intangible elements for us. Not to mention, we wanted to do a horror film. Horror films, probably, pound for pound compared to other genres in the movie business, are the most lucrative. Best chance of being successful financially.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why there's no accident as to why you see so many horror films come out, just because.
Yeah, there is.
They don't require a huge name. They can be very contained in one house or one setting.
I can see the budget being really low as well.
Totally, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why they can work really well. So right now we are in the final stages of editing that, and we're also close to signing a deal with an agency to represent it, to go out and package and sell the film. So we're very confident in that. We think it's a real original horror film that not the most uplifting film, but you're definitely going to be scared. So Brian's a real auteur. I don't know what's going on in his head, and I wouldn't want to get trapped there, but it's really interesting. So
maybe you don't want to. That's okay. Maybe you don't want to know what's going on, right?
Yeah. So and it was just an awesome experience. Like the filmmakers, the producers on there, Kevin Mattisau, Sonny Malley, Adrian Biddle, working with them was just an awesome experience, and they're so gracious and generous. And because we were just executive producers, we just raised money for that film, but they really invited us to collaborate with them. So that's just a fantastic experience. So we're excited about that. I'm producing a documentary. So one of my good friends, Olivia Kwan, her mother played on a pro women's football team, like full contact tackle football team in the 70s in Houston.
What?
Called the Houston Hurricanes. Yeah. Hurricanes with an Hurricanes.
Yeah.
And nobody knows, but there was an actual like pro women's football league back then. With probably 14 or so teams across the country. Yeah.
What?
I know. And it's this amazing story of how these women came together, kind of all walks of life, all different sexual orientations, all socioeconomic classes, and they just came together because they love playing football. And none of these women had spoken to each other in probably until Olivia arranged a players' reunion this summer that we also filmed in addition to all the interviews with the players that she tracked down. We had this players' reunion for them, and they hadn't seen each other in like 40 years. It was a very emotional, amazing event. And so it's just this great like women empowerment, underdog story. It's also, as you can imagine, very culturally relevant. I mean, when we were filming is when the U.S. women were winning the World Cup in Europe this summer. Like it was just awesome. So we've gotten just a lot of attention around it, and we're super excited. So we have to get some more footage. We're kind of editing as we go right now, but I'm really excited for that as well. We also have I'm also working on a TV series, a half-hour TV series called Columbia. It was created by this filmmaker in New York named Ronan Jora, and he made this short film called Scratch, kind of based on this devil character. So it's this Ronan is this amazing guy. He really primarily cut his teeth doing visual effects in Los Angeles for about 9 years. Then he moved to New York and just kind of started doing his own thing. Okay. And he created this short film. When I was shown it, I'd seen nothing like it. What he was doing with composites and green screens and on the small budget he did it on, he called in favors, but and his girlfriend Carrie Von Driest is a producer on it and an actress in it as well. She's amazing. They created one of the most unique things I've ever seen, and so I got connected through him with another producer, Dan Zelikman, who's with Moustache Films out in New York. And we started talking with Ronan, like, hey, this is amazing. Do you have more of this? And he said, yeah, I've got an idea for a full TV show. So we're like, great, let's develop this. Let's make this happen. So we're about to go out to market with it this week. It's it kind of has the look and feel of like if you kind of think of Sin City or Watchmen, but with the film noir of like the film noir aspects, like Seven, or even like an element of True Detective, with the whole world building of like the movie Seven. I know I threw a lot at you there, but like, if you're fans of any of that stuff, like this is going to be for you. Especially like True Detective. I mean, even though that was a full hour series, it's a half hour, but I think it's going to have those there, but you're going to be brought into this world that you've never seen before. So we are crazy excited for this. And
what's the name of that? What's the name of that series again?
It's called Columbia.
Great. We'll look for that coming out, listeners. How do you make that intro, by the way? How do you find the introduction to the people in your industry that you need to talk to?
Oh man. Great question. If there's one thing I'm good at, it is maintaining relationships and networking. Just I pride myself on connecting people who I think can help each other, and I think that's reciprocated with me as well. So you have to be out there and visible. So I got connected to these guys through a personal friend and a business partner I have with a side business out in New York. And this is like one of his best friends from childhood. And obviously he knew I was doing film. He's like, hey, you should connect up with one of my best friends out here. He's getting into feature films and TV as well. So, that's, the film industry, entertainment industry, just like any other industry that I've been exposed to, is about networking and relationships. And I don't mean networking in the sense that, you're just trying to meet somebody who can hopefully help you. Like, meeting people that you can help them and they can help you too. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I invest, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I invest a lot of my time just meeting other people and going to Sundance and going to Toronto and going to South by and going to film festivals and just being out there and staying in touch with people. Doing that is going to, it's how, a lot of the films that four of the films that I've been involved in so far have come from one guy, Milan Chakraborty. He's an amazing producer. I met him at Cannes 7 years ago before I was even in the film industry. I went out there just to party when my brother was out there. Yeah. And Milan and I just struck up a friendship. My brother went with him too. And he, he's the one that brought us Plus One, that won the Audience Award at Tribeca. He brought us The Dark and the Wicked that I just told you about. So
yeah, that's a huge deal there in terms of trust factor.
Totally.
People, create a trust and a relationship, and next thing you know, this guy's bringing you. And the good part about that is that it's a legit friendship. There's like I always say, build relationships, but build real ones. Right. Yeah. There's an idea, because it's so much more valuable. You'll have so much more fun, and everyone's so much more committed to everyone else's success.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about how you're currently, so Business and Life, that's the name of the podcast. We always talk about life and what the light at the end of the tunnel is. What is that for you? I always try to remind people that at some point, what is that light, and are you working towards it? What's the end game for you in this industry?
Man, that's a great question, Mike. I mean, when I started off with this, my brother, I mean, it was really just to start doing it and just start making projects happen. And really to find my own kind of personal niche. Like, frankly, I didn't know if I was going to like producing, because I never produced anything before. I didn't really know what it was like. I can read a lot of books and stuff, but you don't know what it's like until you get into it, right?
Right.
I know with what I've done at this point, what I know that I really love is the creative aspect of producing. I really love, working with the director and the writer on the script. I love the whole casting process. I love talking about location. I love then once the film's done, watching it over and over and trying to fine tune it and just make it a better film. I really draw on the creative aspect. I'm not as much into the deal making and contracts and agreements, even though I can do that. And my past experience makes me very comfortable with that.
Good.
Plus, I took an entertainment finance class, UCLA extension, just to make sure I did have some of the vocabulary, and so that was a great decision as well, right?
Got another lingo in the entertainment business, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
So and I have my brother as a partner too. He's taught me a ton. He's
good. Yeah,
valuable. Good. So the end game now is I'm really focusing on. I'm thinking more about some of these individual projects really than I am my company. I mean, frankly, we don't really have, Inwood Road Films does not really have a brand just yet, because if you look at our website, we've got a romantic comedy, we've got a horror film, we've got a documentary, we've got two contained thrillers, Confessional and Burn, which are great too. So like we're a little all over the place, and but I don't want that to last forever. I do want to kind of like find our niche and kind of what we want to focus on. Like we are interested in social impact films. That's what really drove me, I think, to.
That's cool.
House,
yeah, that's a big great topic right now too.
Yeah, exactly. So, we are drawn to those. We want to do more of that. I love working on this documentary. Something I didn't plan on. We went into this to focus on, scripted feature films. And I kind of fell into this through, personal relationship that I have. And it's probably been the most fulfilling thing I've done so far, is working on this documentary. So, wow. I'm afraid, for better or worse, I may have the documentary bug, and I might be doing more of those.
Well, because it's real. I think
it is.
It's real. It's impactful, and that you can impact others out. Doesn't get me wrong. I think that stories, like you mentioned before, you got into the business because you love to tell stories. I got into podcasts because I love to hear the stories and resonate with some of those, right? But the same idea is that those stories are real and they're impactful, and you can impact others. A movie can do the same thing for a short period of time. It's entertainment, but can you impact a life for a long time or for a lifetime with a documentary? And the answer is 100%.
Absolutely. And so much, documentaries get a hard time because everybody says they don't make money, but actually if you can do it right, they can. And again, no one may, retire in Malibu just because purely working on documentaries. Right. But, from a filmmaking standpoint, you can control a lot more of what happening. I feel like, anyway, in my experience, just kind of control what that story is more. You may not get all the interviews you want, may not get the exact footage that you want, but you can't control that. And you feel like you are shining a light on an untold story. Those are the best documentaries, and I think that's just, for me, that's personally gratifying, and that's worth more than any kind of profit I can make off of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
However, the last thing I'll say about documentaries, though, is this industry is becoming more and more of an IP game. And when you find a story out there, a true story, it's really, ironically, it's what studios and other production companies are becoming more and more interested in. They really creating adaptations based on true stories. That means, that gives you kind of a built-in audience, right? And a lot of filmmakers are seeing, and people investing in films, like, yeah, absolutely, we should make a fiction version of this because it was a successful documentary. It was interesting, right? So they see it as less risk. So I think we're going to continue to see more documentaries and a lot more content based on really great documentaries as well.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Tell me a little bit about the IP part. How is it becoming IP in a entertainment film industry?
Yeah, great question. So, today, if you look at the big films, big franchise films, the studio films being made today, they are not based around a concept or a big star like they were maybe like in the late 90s. They are, and I think a big part of this started with the comic book movies, like with when those really started to be taken to another level around like 2001 or so, with Spider-Man and so forth. The franchises today are built on, like I just said before, built-in audiences. And where does that come from? That comes from books, a lot from books, right? Like Harry Potter was built on the success of that book, right?
Right.
The big studios are grabbing the most popular IP out there, and they're building franchises on top of it because it's got a built-in audience, it's got a built-in following, right? But that doesn't necessarily have to happen on the grand scale. I mean, there are so many amazing stories out there Whether it's like, you could find an article in a newspaper or an article in a magazine, right? And filmmakers are, they're buying the rights to those. They're optioning those rights because it's when you're grounding that story, and that this is based on something that actually happened. These are based on real characters. Right. It has that level of intrigue, right? This is for me, and I mean, again, I'm speculating as why this is happening, but
sure.
Having that IP, when you control that IP from a financial perspective as well, it enables you to do all the other kinds of content development around that.
Right. It sounds like they've taken somewhat of the licensing model to kind of monopolize some of these things,
right?
Which makes sense. It's wild, but it makes sense. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, if I had a lot more money to work with, I would be out there acquiring a lot more IP.
Sure. Sure.
That's interesting to me because you can build on it so much more, and I think there's a lot less risk. It takes longer to develop, and you've got to there's a longer runway because you're really just starting with you're not starting with a finished script, right? You're starting with, like I said, a book or a newspaper article, or maybe it was a documentary. It takes a long time to find a writer, write that script, find all the talent around it, package it, make the movie. Right. But if you've got the resources and the expertise for that, then anybody that does have that is following through on that because it's a really viable way to make money and make interesting content in the business right now.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept as far as the IP stuff goes. So tell me a little bit about, let's just go back to our final question of the podcast here. Out of all your successes and failures in your business here, I know for the last few years, what is the one piece of parting advice you give to the business and life nation out there listening to us today?
Oh man, great question. I mean, I would say, this is for me personally, but we can all spend a lot of time and energy having anxiety and worrying about the uncertain. When I started just being more present with myself and listening to yourself and what you really want to do with your life, and it's hard to do that because there are so many distractions out there. But if you are unsatisfied with what you're doing with your career, and you're not sure what you want to do, but you know that you're not satisfied with what you're doing now, you need to find time to take a break from some distractions and be with yourself and try to understand what that is. That may sound a little woo-woo and
no, that's great.
But I definitely did that, and even if you do decide to start your own business, because I think a lot of your listeners might be contemplating right now. Don't concern yourself with all the uncertainty. Just try to focus on what's straight ahead of you. Small victories, like you mentioned earlier. So when you do take the lead, don't concern yourself with. It sounds ironic, like don't concern yourself with the future. But what I mean by that is don't get too anxious or worked up over the uncertainty of it, right? And just remind yourself, like, hey, like you've only got a short time on this earth, right? So make it count, and yeah, just go for it.
Absolutely, that's great advice. I mean, business and life nation, you can definitely shoot for the moon. You'll land on the stars. You got to create the rocket first, right? You got to create the space shuttle first. And so, yeah, you don't have to look that far on the top of the mountain. It's okay to take the first step of the hike, and that's great advice. James, I really appreciate you being on the show, and I thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot, Mike. It's great being here. Appreciate it.
You got it. Life Nation, you got to remember that in order for things to change, you must change. And in order for things to get better, you must get better. You just got better by hanging out with me, Michael Leibus, and the Business and Life Nation. So come back tomorrow because I'm here dropping sound bombs 7 days a week, baby. If you'd like to subscribe, please do, so you can take action and execute. See you tomorrow.